King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of December 1st, 2020, and episode number 460. And this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And I don't know about you guys, but here in Northeast Ohio, we are encountering a winter storm warning. We have lots of snow on the ground, lots of snow on the way, and it's December 1st. So it's going to be a year, I guess, of snow, or at least a season. The year is almost over, but be careful what you wish for, because we still got another one coming next year. And hopefully 2021 will be a little bit better, if not a whole lot better, than this year. But yeah, here in Ohio, we are experiencing weather of the winter kind. And, you know, we know, we're used to that. It happens. But it hit all of a sudden, all at once, in pretty much a day and a half. We've got, where I'm at, I think 8 inches of snow just in about 10 to 12 hours, something like that. And it's coming down still. So, yeah, it's fun. Anyway. Well, yes, it is December 1st, and tonight I've decided we're going to go ahead and we're going to start the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2020. It seems really weird to do it, but I guess it is December, and I generally wait till December to do that, and always cross my fingers and cross my toes to not have a story that bumps anything else out of the top 10. And we got a story tonight that I keep thinking, it's not going to get any bigger. It's not going to get any bigger, but it's getting big. And it's a story we talked about last week. And there's even more sides to that. We got a couple of stories tonight that we're going to follow up on right before we get into. I'm only going to do two. So I'm going to do the number 10 and number 9 story of 2020. And it'll kind of give some things away, because you'll notice if you've been paying attention to the paranormal news, you'll notice a handful of stories. I'll actually talk about a handful of stories that didn't make it. I actually whittled it down to 35 stories, and it ended up, that was a lot to go. About 10, 15, I cut right off the top. I almost did a top 20. Kind of thought about it for a minute, but that'd be a lot of stuff to have to put together. So I opted just to continue to keep it as a top 10, but we'll kind of look at some of those that didn't make the cut tonight and other nights as we get closer to the number 1 story, which probably is not a huge surprise. It's just kind of the way I put them all together, I think, is the big deal. And that is all I have for my pre-stuff here. Yeah, we're done with that. So let's get into the news. And, one more thing. So the events page, which was a complete disaster all year long with crossing things off, things getting canceled, things getting delayed, postponed, everything. Well, starting to honestly look at it and going to start working on 2021. Since a lot of these dates are already set for next year, I'm going to spend a little bit of time once I get caught up on the rest of the top 10, get that all written out and get it ready, get it formatted to present to you guys, as well as to put it on the blog. And so you can get all the links and some photographs, as well as the story behind the stories. I'm going to get that conferences, conventions page kind of worked on it, kind of ironed out, little files down, get it sharpened up as we head into the 2021 season. So if you know of any conference or convention that's not on that list, feel free to let me know. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter. I guess you could try on Instagram. I think I still kind of check that with every now and again. But Paranews Insider. So Facebook /Paranews Insider and Twitter @Paranews Insider is how you get a hold of me. You can also email me through the website. There is a form on paranewsinsider.com that you can get a hold of me fairly easily, hopefully within 24 hours, even if I'm at work, try to respond. Oh, I had a long day today, 13-hour day. Anyway, so no actual paranormal news, which is really weird. I think it's the first time, and maybe second time all year long. So no cryptid news tonight, no UFO news tonight. Well, maybe kind of partially some UFO news, and not exactly ghost news, although I do have a story I've been putting off for a couple of weeks. But we'll see where the time takes us. If I have to double back, I will double back to that story. So we're going to kick it off with some other news tonight. And we're going to pick up where we left off last week with probably one of the biggest stories going on right now. It's probably the biggest story we've had in months going on right now. And I guess it's not technically paranormal. It's just kind of an oddity thing, which is why it may or may not make the top 10. You'll have to find out here in about 20, 25 minutes. But last week, I talked about, not only is it a big story, it's probably one of the strangest stories of the year. I mean, 2020 is already strange enough, but this was a really strange story and the odd discovery of what is being called the Utah monolith. I'm sure you've seen some stories about that. It's continuing to evolve. It's evolved even more tonight. Right before the show, there's some new information. It's got a whole lot stranger, and it's escalated rather quickly from last week's show. So, kind of bring you up to date on this. Officials located a strange three-sided stainless steel structure, pretty much by pure luck. It's back on November 18th. So they were surveying the area for bighorn sheep. So a bunch of biologists in a helicopter flying around the Utah desert, southeast Utah desert, when one of them spotted this big silvery object sticking up. It wasn't, it was down in a little canyon here, so they luckily spotted it. They flew almost directly over top of it, but they spotted it. They circled back, and they landed and decided to get a better look at it. They should have just kept going, in all honesty. And hindsight's 2020, but I think they're thinking, "Wow, we really created a disaster." But they landed the helicopter. They went up to it. They posed with it. They took some videos and made a few observations before heading back to their work. I don't know. Maybe they just took the rest of the day off after that. On November 20th, so 2 days later, the Utah Department of Public Safety posted photos of the pillar on Instagram. And the story kind of took off a little bit. It wasn't huge, but it was starting to get a little traction. Read about it in a few sources, but it really hadn't really taken off a whole lot. But 3 days later, they posted videos of the object, and this is when the story just literally exploded. It went everywhere. CNN, Fox, all over the UK. I mean, granted, some of the UK tabloids had already picked it up, but now it was pretty much worldwide. It was covered by everybody, from Australia to Japan, China. I mean, everybody was talking about this story by the 23rd. And it was a huge interest. And of course, when this became an interest a little bit more than just people like us here in the paranormal that have an interest in this kind of weird, wacky stuff, it created a huge interest, of course, in people trying to locate the monolith. And the Utah Department of Public Safety described the object as a monolith. So they used that in their initial description. And a lot of people began making the connection to the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, that's come forward within the last couple of, probably the last 2 days or so. People are saying that this is a kind of a ploy because they're going to reboot that, but nobody has any information about a Space Odyssey at all being rebooted or a new movie or anything like that. So I don't think that's part of it. But a lot of people are making some assumptions about what happened here. But less than 48 hours after these videos erupted on the news sites and they were shared on social media everywhere, it took less than 48 hours for a Reddit user, his name Tim Slane, to figure out where the structure was and then post coordinates for the structure on social media, and then for people to find it in real life. IRL, as they say. I don't know who they are, but they're pretty hip and cool. They have nice hairdos, cool clothes. So it took less than 48 hours for people to figure out where it is and to arrive. So Tim Slane, he used the flight path of the helicopter along with some details from the videos and Google Earth to track down the location of the object and, of course, let the whole entire world know about it, which is a really smart thing to do. But, somebody would have figured it out anyway. I was kind of curious when I saw it. I kind of thought about it. I'm like, nah, got more important things to do. And I'll show you a little screen clip of what that looks like. So in the chat room, got a little photo of what it looks like on Google Earth. It's really not that much. If you really didn't pay attention or really didn't look hard, you might not find it. It's just basically a shadow in the desert. But understanding where this was and the type of landscape and topography where this monolith was located is kind of how he narrowed it down. Of course, once he found it, posted it, people were on their way. And of course, days prior, the Utah DPS, Department of Public Safety, they did not disclose the location due to the area being remote. It was lacking cell phone service. It's a pretty difficult area to get in and out of. It's dangerous as well. You don't want people going in there that don't know how to operate an off-road vehicle or to get stuck, which is exactly what happened. But not only that, they didn't want people out there. They didn't say this. This was not part of their announcement of why they didn't want people there, but this was another reason was the area itself contains many Native American artifacts, including petroglyphs. There are all sorts of Native American, there's literally arrowheads. They say that you can just walk and you see arrowheads just sitting there on the desert floor. So they don't want people going in there and messing with that or stealing these things, which is probably more than likely what happened. There's also very little vegetation there, and there's some things in that part of the desert that are very fragile. So they didn't want off-road vehicles, trucks, cars, motorcycles, helicopters, blimps, whatever, making their way to this location. But they didn't really disclose all that information. They didn't want to help narrow it down. But again, it only took 2 days. Once revealed that it was discovered, the location of the object was in a red sandstone canyon in Lockhart Basin in San Juan County in Utah. The land is now public land, but was once part of the Bears Ear National Monument, which was at the time a protected area of Utah. I believe that was back in 2015. It didn't last very long. The area was removed from the protected lands area in 2017 by President Donald Trump. So it went back into the public hands. And once the location was posted, it was quickly shared throughout hundreds of different social media, I don't want to say outlets, but individual users were sharing it all over the place. I saw it numerous times. Didn't really see it much on Facebook, but I guess it was on Facebook. Instagram was big, and once people started getting there, they were shooting their Instagram videos and then telling other people where it was because they didn't want other people to beat them there. But there were crowds. There were literally crowds of people out there. Probably more people showed up at the monolith than at the Area 51 raid last year, which is kind of weird. It was a race to see who could get there first, but there was I don't think anybody was actually first. I don't think. A couple of people thought they were, but there were other people already there. So yes, hundreds of people made their way to the site over the last few days, and of course left behind waste and trash. And when I say waste, I mean waste. They destroyed a lot of plant life. A few cars had to be towed from the site after getting stuck, and reports were from people that were there that it wasn't like there's no roads. There's no, where we're going, there's no roads. But no roads in or out of that area. So people were just making their way from wherever they could. So it was just cars everywhere in every direction, destroying pretty much everything in that area just to get to this structure. So yeah, again, I think they're regretting letting people know where this thing was. The structure showed signs of tampering within a couple of days of being physically discovered. 2 rivets were removed from the top of the structure so that someone could peer inside of it to see what was inside. Close to midnight on November 27th, 2 hikers were headed to the location of the object when they spotted a pickup truck driving away from the area with a large object in the bed. When they arrived at the location of the monolith, they discovered it was gone. And all that remained was a triangular hole in the ground and a piece of aluminum that used to be the top of the structure. But more details have come out. There was actually the witnesses who were at the structure when the actual theft occurred have just basically posted this afternoon, came forward and said what they'd seen. So the picture in chat, you see the desert floor, a triangular kind of a hole dug there, and the remnants of the top of the monolith there on the right-hand side. People were still posing with that. As of this afternoon, people were still posing with the remnants of this. So Ross Bernards posted on Instagram. He was there was 4 of them, so 4 people, three of his friends and himself. He drove 6 hours down to the middle of nowhere in Utah to find the way to get in. Around 7 o'clock, there was tons of cars, he said, on the way to the area. And then they had there was a group there. Then they left. They were there for about an hour and 40 minutes. They had the whole entire place for themselves. They were getting ready to take off. They heard some people coming, and they figured, you know what, it'd be nice if these people just had the monolith to themselves, like we did, at midnight. And they said before they could leave, 4 guys came around the corner, and 2 of them walked up to it. They gave a couple pushes on the monolith, and one of them said to these Ross and his friends, "You better get your pictures." But then he pushed it over, and it leaned to one side. He yelled to his friends that they didn't need any tools, and they recorded this saying, "This is why you don't leave trash in the desert." All 4 of the guys then came up. They pushed it pretty much to the ground on one side, and then they popped it out, and it landed on the ground. They broke it apart, and they took it away in a wheelbarrow to their vehicle. Actually, no, that was 8:48 p.m. local time. So they said leave no trace, which is if you've ever heard leave no trace, that's kind of what we, as a hiker, so I'm a backpacker as well. So Leave no trace. You don't leave trash in the desert. You pack in what you pack out. Even if you see trash, you try to pack that out as well. You try to leave nature better than when you came in, if that's possible, which it's usually not. You're trampling all over everything. But I don't leave trash. I put out fires if people leave small campfires or anything going. Just try to do your best to not disturb nature as much as you can. So they made the comment about leaving no trace, and they left. They took off with this busted monolith. So they took it with them. So if they were just going to destroy it, they would have just left it there. I would have figured. But back on November 28th, the Bureau of Land Management announced that on Facebook that credible reports were made that the monolith was removed on November 27th and that they would not pursue any investigation into its disappearance. So the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of Public Safety, as well as the Utah Department of Heritage and Arts all stated the object being placed on public land was illegal to begin with. So they don't really care pretty much what happened to it. And the Department of Heritage and Arts also added that it was vandalism. So putting the structure in the desert where it was vandalism. And it pleaded with people to put their curiosity aside and think about the ancient artwork that could be destroyed in an effort to see this contemporary piece of work, which is very temporary on top of being contemporary. A number of attempts have been made to figure out who actually put this monolith up, but all these guesses have been pretty much wrong. People have said it was one artist, but this artist died in 2011. Well, the structure is a little bit newer than that, and it's unlikely anyone's going to step forward after this complete debacle because there's fingers pointing in a lot of different directions, and all the destruction that happened out there in the desert is just unbelievable. And despite accounts early on in its discovery, the monolith is not 40 or 50 years old. They made the comment about that, and that's still circulating. Using Google Earth, some people were able to, I could do this. You can see that the structure was put in sometime around August 2015 and September of 2016, but a Dutch journalist using a Maxar satellite image, actually multiple images, he narrowed down the time frame to July 7th, 2016 to October 21st, 2016. So sometime in that time frame is when this monolith was erected in the desert. So still doesn't help. Nobody stepped forward. We still don't know who has it and who had it, who built it, who put it in, and who actually has it right now. Either way, it makes no difference. Somebody decided to be greedier than others. Everybody wanted to go see this, but now this four guys, which, who is it? Ben Franklin said two people can keep a secret if one of them are dead. I think it was something like that. Sounds good. So four people. I'm sure this is eventually going to get out, and especially this next part of the story, which is also kind of late breaking. It's kind of funny, actually. The Ripley's, who does the Believe It or Not stuff. So Ripley's has offered a $10,000 reward to the first person who comes forward as the proud legal owner of the monolith or provides accurate information exclusively to Ripley's on where to actually find it. So this is only this Utah monolith. They're offering $10,000 to locate this thing. But from the sounds of it, from the description of Ross Bernard's witness who saw this thing topple and be ripped apart, I don't think there's much left of this thing, if anything. And how do you trust, anybody can get some aluminum, bend it up, and try to pass it off as the monolith at this point. So I think it's bad on their part to throw money in the middle of this. It's an embarrassment, pretty much this entire story. Um, just absolutely destroyed. Ross Bernard's described seeing at least 70 different cars and an airplane as they were headed in and out. Cars were parking everywhere, all over the delicate desert landscape. People were coming from every direction to try to reach this thing. And the landscape is just absolutely destroyed. But, in the desert, it's going to take, in that part, that kind of desert, it's going to take a long time for it to, it could take a long time. Could actually take maybe 100 or 200 years or longer, because it's not like they get tons of rain there. The winds are generally calm in this part of the desert, from what I've read. So it's going to be a long time. And if they go out there, granted it's public property, so I'm not sure if anyone's going to go out there and try to do any cleanup or try to find to see if anything was destroyed. But just an absolutely horrible story. The way it turned out, it was kind of cool to begin with, and then was just kind of horrified over the last couple of days to read about all these things, and then today to read about a monetary reward of $10,000 for information or the actual structure. Just insane about this. And yeah, definitely no artist is going to step forward at this point to claim it. I was hoping that all would go well, and maybe somebody would move it or remove it or put it in a museum or something, and maybe the artist would step forward. But now this debacle, the desert being destroyed, and just, I shouldn't say destroyed, but just being tore up, I don't think we're going to see it. And somebody's going to have some bills to pay if that were the case, if somebody is discovered to be the person behind it. So yes, we have this Utah structure, but we've been paying attention. This is really ramped up in the last, less than 24 hours. Probably the last 18 hours, the story has gone really viral with the second part of this. So if that wasn't strange enough to have a strange monolith discovered in the middle of nowhere, what are the odds that the same story literally repeated itself in another part of the world? So last Thursday, November 26th, another triangular monolith structure was discovered on a hill near an important archaeological landmark area in Romania. Got pictures of that one as well. If you've not seen that one, it's not as cool looking. I don't think it's as cool looking as our Utah desert one. These things will be popping up everywhere, I think. You can see this is along a service road here, so it's not out in the middle of nowhere completely. And this structure here is billed as being 13 feet tall. And the one in Utah, I've heard everything from 9 feet to 13 feet as well, but I think it's probably right around 10. Well, it's right around 0 now. And culture and heritage official Roxana Josanu said, quote, "It's on private property, but we still don't know who the monolith's owner is yet. It's in a protected area on an archaeological site," unquote. And yet that sounds eerily familiar. Private property, don't know who the owner is. Protected area near an archaeological site. Weird. So my guess is this second monolith was constructed and planted as a reaction to the large story coming out of Utah. Somebody was trying to cash in on a large story to get some attention. The land suggests that digging was done very recently, and the structure seems to suggest a rush job of construction. So somebody put this together. Maybe they had it laying around, the parts and pieces, and they just kind of rushed it together. And the area where it's dug in is fresh. So somebody just put it there. So, and witnesses in the area knew it was not there just days prior. So this brand new thing just trucked into this area. Again, probably just as a reaction to this other story And while the news reports all over the United Kingdom and Europe plugged the appearance of the Romanian monolith and kind of laughed at the United States for the disappearance of the one in Utah, yeah, something strange yet expected happened again. This one, sometime on November 29th, the Romanian monolith disappeared, leaving only a light snow-covered area where the object once stood. So it completely mirrored the one in Utah, for the most part. I don't have the snow-covered picture. Yeah, just it's gone. It's gone. So both of them have disappeared. No reward for the one in Romania as of yet, from what I've heard. Gone. The Utah one, I would say just a complete and absolute embarrassment. Way worse than the Area 51 joke of a story from last year. Just all the destruction in the desert. They don't even know the scale yet of how much has been destroyed. There's still cars out there. It's going to be a car graveyard, I think, out there in the Utah desert. Yeah, you'll be able to spot them on Google Earth probably for the next few years, so that'll be a little trivia thing going forward. So monolith news. Strange stuff. But did the monolith story make the top 10? That's the million-dollar question tonight. So, I weighed very heavily because this is a pretty big story. It's pretty viral. It's been out there for a little while. It's gained a lot of traction. But the only thing keeping me from putting it in the top 10 is the fact it really has nothing to do with the paranormal for the most part. I mean, you could argue 2001: A Space Odyssey. You could argue that it's a conspiracy theory. There's a lot of things you can argue about it, but it's just somebody put something out there and they shouldn't have, and then people were bored and destroyed the desert to go find it. So it doesn't really move anything forward. It doesn't move anything back as far as the paranormal is concerned. That's really the only thing keeping this out of the top 10 for me, although we did cover it. We did talk about it for 2 weeks here. And chances are more information will surface between now and next week. I'm pretty sure about that. So sure we'll revisit this story again. And I don't know if it continues to blossom or continues to percolate through the news. Perhaps I will have to go back on my word of not putting it in the top 10, and maybe it shall. But right now it's sitting comfortably, putting a little pressure on my number 10 story, sitting in number 11. But it's very close, and I'll let you guys be the judge. So when I get to the actual number 10 tonight, and you don't think that's a big enough story, my argument's not good enough, well, fine. I'll change it. This show's not just my show; it's your show too. So I will make that fair. So I won't stuff the vote box. Don't get me wrong, but I have enough people in the chat room. We can make a decision, I guess. So last week we did talk about the monolith story, but we also talked about the announcement by the National Scientific Foundation that the Arecibo radio telescope would be decommissioned and demolished in the coming weeks. It's gone. But scientists, experts, and Puerto Ricans have all begun using social media and other things to help try and save the 57-year-old observatory. They don't want it to go away. It means a lot to a lot of people, professionally and personally, and it means a lot to the community in various ways. People began using the hashtags Save the Arecibo Observatory, as well as hashtag What Arecibo means to me, seems like a lot of words, hashtags, as a platform to share the impact the observatory has had on them as individuals, as well as overall with science, as well as the world. An official petition has begun on the White House webpage, which points out that the structure sits atop an aquifer, so that if the telescope were to collapse on its own, or even with a controlled demolition, could affect the local population. So them being able to get water, that's a concern. I mean, the infrastructure of Puerto Rico in general has still not recovered from hurricanes and the earthquakes earlier this year. So they can't afford anything else to go wrong. But that's kind of where I get a little, I don't know, I kind of get a little funny about this. Thinking about all this money going to Arecibo when the country itself, it's an American territory here. And there's people that still don't have electricity. There's still people that don't have water. I don't know, but we want to rebuild a 60-year-old telescope. I don't know. The petition urges the Army Corps of Engineers or another agency to evaluate the telescope's structure to see if it could be stabilized. Now, obviously, there was already, I think, 3 independent groups that went out there and surveyed the area. They used drones and other techniques without really putting any weight on the structure or lifting it up or doing anything, just observations, photographs, and other means without actually touching anything to see if there was any way they could stabilize it or repair it without further damage or potential collapse. And all 3 basically said, no way, this thing it's surprising it hasn't fallen on its own. We don't know why. These cables broke, so there's no way to really know whether or not it's going to just fall on its own. So probably the best thing to do is just controlled demolition, get it knocked down while you can control that. So it's not destroying everything, because they plan on keeping some parts of the area intact for the scientific future, basically. But this White House webpage, official petitions, gathered, it has to gather 100,000 signatures. So I'm not sure if you've ever seen these things, but you got to get 100,000 signatures in 30 days to get an official response from the White House, which I think it takes 2 days or something like that. They'll respond. So far, the petition has acquired 45,000 signatures. I haven't looked at it. Let me look at it now. 45,000. So it's not really moving along all that much, I don't think. But let's see. Okay, so it needs 36,267 signatures. So there's 63,000. So almost 64,000 people have signed it. So it's gained some traction. But it still needs another 36,000 to actually get a discussion. That doesn't mean that they're going to actually do anything. It just means they're going to say something, a response. But I don't know, again, how much you know about these White House things, but these petitions. But if you see some of the ones that are in there, and I'll leave a link to that in the chat room. So if you guys are interested in checking that out or signing it. Yes, I did sign it myself. I signed it. I think to see independent or other, not leaving it to the NSF, I think to have other people view this or other people say whether or not this thing is worth it, I think is worth a chance. This isn't, if this goes through, we get 100,000 signatures. It's not as if they're going to definitely go and fix it, or they're definitely going to spend the money on bringing it back. It's just, again, another evaluation or to contemplate doing it. So it's not a guarantee. And I'm not even sure if it's going to be worth doing this petition. I don't know if if you look at this particular individual petition kind of peruse, I think that's the word I'm looking for, view some of these other petitions, and you'll see what I'm talking about. There's some really crazy things that people are petitioning about, trying to get people involved. And they have way more signatures than this Arecibo thing. Although most of these just like, I don't like so-and-so, so I want them in jail kind of thing. Not all of them are bad, but I don't know. I don't know if the petition is going to be worth it, what it's going to do. And again, they still have quite a few signatures to get in order to even just get a response. So the NSF stated that even if the structure could be stabilized, which they don't think it could be, still likely cause long-term stability issues. And there's, again, still the potential for an uncontrolled collapse. So it could just fall apart at any moment in time, which I don't know. I probably shouldn't say this, but I kind of feel like any day now we're going to get news that it collapsed on its own. But with hurricane season long gone, well, not long gone, but gone, hopefully, there still exists the chance for earthquakes or anything else to, just a random, another cable breaks. That's probably pretty much it for that thing. Regardless, many people are going to continue to push for the observatory, and for good measure, because, one of the things that, everything comes to an end. This observatory was built, it was designed and redone, not even using the original plans. It was just basically kind of put up, I don't want to say haphazardly, but kind of redesigned on the fly. And it's a one-of-a-kind structure. There are other radio telescopes similar to it, but nothing completely like Arecibo. So, it wasn't meant to last forever. I don't think there was any kind of timeline as to how long it could last. And, this discussion, I think we've talked about this on the show about 4 or 5 years ago, about the potential for Arecibo to be decommissioned back then. So it's not a surprise to a lot of astronomers and other scientists that this has happened. But this particular observatory is still a critical eye for keeping track of near-Earth objects. And, we get reports all the time of such and such or so-and-so hunk of rock is going to be passing between the Earth and the moon and things like that. Or on Christmas Eve, a large asteroid is going to pass very close by to Earth, so close you can smell it. That's not real. That's just, they make a big deal about all these things coming, a few 100,000 miles away. But most of these observations are made by Arecibo. So other observatories can do this, but Arecibo was pretty much designed for this. And it's going to be a huge loss. And I don't know if we can absorb, other observatories can observe the critical eye that Arecibo created to keep track of all these things. And I think, talking about these, all the satellites and stuff the last couple of weeks, the Kessler syndrome and all that, about all this space debris. Well, the Arecibo telescope can actually track all that as well. And I think it would have been critical to help stabilize near-Earth objects and get all that stuff hopefully sorted out as well. But now it looks as if it's gone forever. And with that, I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to look at the number 10 and number 9 story of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2020. And a lot of stories didn't make the cut. Like I mentioned, I've got 35 stories that I wanted to, that really caught my eye, and that stories that really, when I read it, I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I remember that one. That was a pretty good one. That was a pretty good one. And then I kind of weigh them in a way that there's no formal format. I kind of look at it for Again, how viral they are. I think that's very important. Story has to be popular. Story has to be passed around. It doesn't mean it lasts forever. It just has to. I would say most of these stories, I'd say almost all of these stories, were pretty viral for their during the time. Some of them just didn't get the traction of others, though. So that has one part of it. The other part of it is what it has to do with the paranormal, as well as its impact, long term or otherwise. Does it provide an answer to anything? Does it provide us? Does it open new doors of discovery for anything paranormal related? How does it affect the paranormal? That's probably the second part of it. So how viral it was, and what it does for the paranormal. Yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's pretty much kind of how we weigh it, or how I weigh it. I guess it's just me, looking at that. But it was a tough decision. It usually is. I'd say every year it's like you could take the bottom 5 and the next 10 and throw them in a blender, and I don't think anyone could really argue some of these stories now. There's a few that didn't, like I said, didn't last very long. They didn't really splash a whole lot of front pages very long, and they just kind of got swept under the carpet. Or ones that really never even got that far. They're just really interesting stories, and in my opinion. But yeah, a handful of stories, a lot of viral videos. The Gettysburg ghost video back in September. You guys remember that one? The workout ghost video. That one was pretty close, actually, because one of the reasons why was because a solution was discovered. If there was no solution, I wouldn't have ranked it as high as I did. I actually put that 13th. Not that it really matters. The 11 through 35 doesn't really matter, but I also put the Brazil UFO crash. That didn't actually happen. The story went viral, but nothing really actually happened. Nothing verified. No, a couple of claims, but it was all just really just an internet hoax to get attention. So that didn't crack the top 10 because nothing really happened. I also had the Wisconsin Bigfoot Bulletin. That was in there. That was late September. Same week as the Gettysburg ghost video. British Bigfoot sightings. Sometimes I lump stuff together, and we'll see that as we head into the top 10. I sometimes will lump things together because individual stories themselves may not have the traction to get into the top 10. But if you have a theme, I guess the term would be bundle. I kind of bundle stuff together, and it gets up there. And granted, some stuff just stands on its own, and some of these stories kind of evolved over the year. So yeah, I mentioned already that the Utah monolith / Romanian monolith fell down at number 11, and it was very tempted. Had I probably gotten home earlier today, I might have bumped it into the top 10. I'm really considering switching it at this point, but we'll see the next couple of days. I'll make a formal announcement next week, I suppose, as to whether it's going to crack the top 10. But you can be the judge right here in the chat room as I announce the number 10 story. Is this number 10 story big enough to bump that story out? Now, this story wasn't as viral, I don't think, as the this monolith story. The monolith story has lasted a couple of almost 2 weeks now, so, and it's still evolving. Well, this other story only pretty much lasted a day and it was over. But I look at the impact of this moving forward, which it still not has been completely felt. So I think this has a little bit more to do with the paranormal. And number 10 story of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2020 is, without further delay, well, there's a little more further delay there, but it is about MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and it's about the arrest of the director, Jan Harzan. And MUFON Mutual UFO Network is the largest UFO research and investigation outlet in the world. He was arrested back on July 3rd on charges of soliciting a minor for the purposes and engaging in sexual activity, according to the police report. The Huntington Beach Police Department arrested Harzan as well as another gentleman on July 3rd and July 8th, respectively, surrounding sting operations and adult men targeting minor females. A Facebook post on the Huntington Beach Police Department's page said in part, quote, on July 3rd, detectives contacted a male by the name of Jan Harzan after Harzan solicited sexual activity from a detective that he believed was a 13-year-old girl. The suspect solicited the minor to meet for the purpose of engaging in sexual activity, and when the suspect agreed to meet the supposed minor, detectives were there to take him into custody, unquote. Also, according to the police report, Harzan was arrested on multiple felonies and was specifically targeting minor females online. Harzan retired from IBM after 37 years in the information technology business, according to his MUFON bio. Now, since this story happened back in July 3rd, I've really not heard or read anything else about this, whether this has gone to court or his court date, if he made bond or anything. Like, it's completely... I haven't really gone to the, looked at the Huntington Beach courthouses, anything. I'm going to have to do that. That's the only way I'm going to get any information about this. But I have not seen anything evolve in it. It was something I planned on doing to really make sure that the story stayed in the top 10. But I haven't got around to that. But haven't heard any updates on this. You would have thought by now, even with COVID, even with delays on a lot of these kinds of cases, something would have been said of a high-profile person. So why did this story make the top 10? Well, despite being threatened by the Utah and Romanian monolith, again, the Brazil UFO crash, the workout ghost video, the Wisconsin Bigfoot bulletin, and a handful of other stories, this one affects the largest UFO organization in the world. And despite an uptick in popularity and recognition of UFO and related phenomena, this is another black eye for the organization, and really for the field of research as a whole as well, I think. The short-term effects seem minimal. I mean, they just bumped the guy off. They took him off the website, and they just made somebody else the director. So they kind of sidestepped it. They didn't really... they made a small statement about it, and they just moved on. But this story here may have a long-lasting effect. It's decidedly made a lot of people quit the organization. A lot of people have moved on from this and decided that this is pretty much the last straw. So we'll see how this wears down the organization's foundation as well as its public trust. Now, again, the story it was a flash in the pan and went away, which is my only kind of hesitation about putting it in the top 10. But this could really affect UFO research and especially MUFON itself as an organization moving forward. So why is the story only number 10 if it's such a big deal? Although this was shocking, it seemed to disappear as quickly as it appeared. So the MUFON director being arrested is your number 10 story of 2020. Or is it? Do you guys think that the monolith thing beats this out? I still think I want to kind of wait. I'm going to wait a couple of days, let the dust settle. The dust in the Utah desert settle. The number 9 story this year of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2020. Oh, I thought I heard a drum somewhere. Lake monsters, but not Loch Ness. All the other monsters that we heard about this year from Argentina, Lake Champlain, China, South Korea, a lot of different monsters. And it's not, you don't always get that every year. Most years it's just the Loch Ness Monster. But we had the let's see, the kayaker who sadly he died. He disappeared. They couldn't find him, but then they found his body about 20 miles away, where he was last seen. There was high winds on the lake, so more than likely the cause of the death of the kayaker. But a video surfaced a few days later of what appears to be a large monster swimming beneath the surface of the lake. So it doesn't show much more than a wave, but created a lot of panic, and people were drawing conclusions that this kayaker maybe was knocked in the water and killed by this creature, which by local legend is named Nahualito. And the creature is many times described as a giant serpent, and many times the same as a Loch Ness Monster, and appears as a plesiosaur, however you want to say it, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. In fact, a 3-hour drive south of that lake is a small lake that is named Laguna del Plesiosario for a reason, because it's purportedly where a few other sightings have occurred of a plesiosaur-like creature, but it's a really small lake. And rumors of this creature have persisted since the late 1800s, and the media took an interest, heavy interest, as early as 1922, which actually predates the Loch Ness Monster's popularity. Then in February, we talked about Lake Okanagan. That, of course, is home to Ogopogo in British Columbia, Canada. A video surfaced by Blake Newdorf. He and his father were out on the dock at Lake Okanagan back on July 10th of 2018, but the video finally hit YouTube on January 2nd of this year, and took off. It had at least 50,000 views at the time. The video has been shared on numerous other sites. Doesn't show much more than a wave, though, in my opinion. Then in February, we had a strange creature that was seen on the beaches of Mexico. Didn't have a can or a bottle of Corona in his hand. People were walking along the beach about a dozen miles or so northwest of Puerto Vallarta in Mexico on the Pacific coast when they spotted this creature dead on the beach. They thought it was a dolphin, but this thing had extremely long tail, no fins, and no eyes. It also had a mouthful of very sharp-looking teeth. But basically, this was just a deep water creature. But again, it was very viral and went all over the place. Then we had a mysterious 10-foot-long creature in a lake in China that frightened villagers, stunned the Chinese media, and left everybody else baffled. I love that word, baffled. Ended up being just a 10-second video. Shows this creature moving up and down at a fast speed. But was billed as the Chinese version of the Loch Ness Monster. Thought to be maybe a crocodile, large snake, or a shoal of fish. So a group of fish crowded underwater. And if you watch the video, near the beginning, you could see a small splash on the far side of the mass, about midway. This, to me, would indicate a small group of fish swimming together. But it was a pretty popular story. Then, of course, I mentioned the Champ Challenge. This happened in early October. I guess Lake Champlain doesn't get much attention anymore. So people up there issued a Champ Challenge. They want people to come forward if they have sightings or experiences to get a little bit more excitement, and probably to sell some more T-shirts in the area. We also had Adam Schwartz of Calgary. He was out in West Kelowna for Thanksgiving, which is Monday, October 12th. He was hanging out near Lake Okanagan, and he was hanging out. And he saw a weird formation of waves and got a video. And he, of course, you get a video of what you think is of a strange creature, and you got to put it on TikTok or other social media sites. That's what you do. You don't give it to a biologist or anybody like that. You just upload it to social media, so people can judge it on their own. In October, we had the story in China, North Korea, of the Lake Tianchi monster, or Heavenly Lake, or of Tianjin, or just Heaven Lake. Of course, that's in China or North Korea, or it's actually in both locations. It's an alpine drift lake that's formed from volcanic activity. It's part of the caldera, and it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful lake surrounded by snow-capped mountains. But when you stand back and you look at this lake, you realize it's elevated, and it's inside of a volcano. It's surrounded by other volcanoes, but it's still beautiful. The lake straddles North Korea to the southeast and China to the northwest, and it's recognized by the Guinness Book of Records, not world records anymore, I guess, as being the highest volcanic lake in the world, and is considered a culturally significant area to all Koreans. The video comes from the caretaker at the mountain, known as Mr. Yu, and it was taken about 1,640 feet above the lake, and all you see is a little black dot in the film. But he says that black dot is probably pretty big from the distance that he's at. He was able to determine there were no boats because the roads were shut down, so he knows it wasn't a boat. Wasn't sure what it was on the water. So that's your number 9 story for 2020 of the top 10 paranormal news stories of 2020. And of course, there are 4 more weeks left, or I should say 4 more Tuesdays left in the month of December. So I don't know, we may not make all of them. May have different things happen. If I get another bit of weather like we did tonight, I don't know, if I will work late or whatever, something may happen. But at least we've covered 2, and hopefully we'll have all the rest of the top 10 to you before the end of the year. And then after that, we'll have that posted on the official blog site of the Paranormal News Insider as we move forward. So yeah, we'll see if that monolith story cracks the top 10 or not. We'll see. If it continues to evolve, more stuff happens, I may just give in. I might give in. We'll see. But thank you for tuning in tonight. Appreciate everybody in chat. Appreciate you if you're not in chat. A big hello to Jim Mallard there in the chat room, the Mallard Report, which is live, usually after my show. But yeah, stay safe. Have a great night, and I will hopefully see you next week. So keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind at least slightly ajar. Don't let your brains fall out, though. And above all else, don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.